Hi, I'm Joanne Chang, and I'm going to be explaining to you the science behind making flaky pie dough. A lot of times people come to me and they say, oh wow, you're a baker? I hate baking. I never ever make pies because all of my pie doughs come out tough. What am I doing wrong? So I'm going to show you the trick, and it's actually really interesting because it's all about science. First thing we're going to do, let me tell you the ingredients first. First we have butter. And then I use eggs and milk. A lot of traditional recipes will use water, they'll use cream, they'll use some sort of other liquid. It's really up to you. That's not necessarily the most important part. So you can use whatever liquid you feel the most comfortable with. Then I have flour, all-purpose flour, and then I have salt and sugar, which are both just for flavoring. So the first thing I'm going to do, and you'll see that I'm using a mixer for this. You can definitely do this by hand if you want. We use the mixer just for ease. And I'm going to mix the flour with the salt and the sugar just for a quick second to get all the dry ingredients mixed together. Just like that. Now I have my butter. The thing about this butter, and I don't know if you can tell, is that it's really cold. I've cubed it so that it's in small pieces. But if you can see, it's straight from the fridge. This is chilled butter. And this is a really important part of this recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and put the cubes of butter in here. And now I'm just going to do what's called pulsing, which is basically turning the mixer off and on, off and on, off and on, just to get the butter first starting to mix in with the flour. That butter is so cold that if I don't pulse, sometimes what happens if you just turn the mixer on is that the butter's really cold and the paddle hits it and then the flour goes everywhere. So what I'm trying to do is first just break down some of that cold butter into small enough pieces so that I can then just leave it on. Whoop, too much. Too much. Okay, so now I'm just gonna paddle it just for about 30 seconds at most. And what the paddle is doing is it's breaking down the butter and mixing it into the flour. And let me show you what's going on here. So what started out as just flour and butter, plus the salt and the sugar for a little bit of seasoning, is now flour and butter, but if you can see, those chunks of butter, they're starting to break down. And now there's pieces that are this big, there's pieces that are this big, and then the other thing that you can see is that the flour itself is no longer just flour. Now the flour, some of the flour has little pieces of butter mixed into it, has butter that we can't even see mixed into it, and as I start to clump up, you can see it's actually starting to hold some of the butter pieces. I'm just going to let this go for not even 30 seconds. Just break down the butter just a little bit more. Just show you once again. So you can see now it's really mostly smaller pieces. Occasionally there's a bigger piece, but it really is mostly these smaller, more manageable pieces. And that's as far as I want to go. So the reason why it's really important to take the butter only to a certain point, there's a bunch of reasons. If you take flour, just imagine taking flour and water and mixing them up in your house and then laying it out and putting it in the oven. What do you think you would get? You would get something really dry and crackery, right? It would probably taste like a saltine cracker. On the other hand, if you take butter and flour and you mix them up totally and then put that in the oven, what would you get? You would get something like maybe like a cookie dough or like a shortbread, something that's really soft and it's been totally covered with butter, but it's not anywhere near like a pie dough. So what I've done by mixing the butter in, not all the way, but leaving a lot of pieces in big chunks, is I'm creating opportunities so that we don't have a cracker dough, but we also don't have a cookie dough, but we have something in the middle. And I'll show you what happens. The next two ingredients are my liquid. I have milk and egg yolk. And again, you can use whatever liquid. A lot of recipes tend to ask for water. My pie dough is a little bit richer, so I like to use milk and egg yolks. But if you want to use water, that's great too. But the important thing is that it is chilled. Just like the butter, this is cold and came straight from the fridge. I'm going to add this all at once to the bowl. And now I'm going to mix this until it just barely comes together. And I'll show it to you just as it starts to come together. So right now I can see that the liquid is mixing into the dough, but there's still a little bit of flour on the bottom. I'm going to take it just until there's no more flour in the bottom. So take a look at this. Now you might say, that doesn't look like any pie dough I've ever worked with. And you're right. This is as far as you want to take it in the bowl. And again, if you want to do this by hand, you can do it by hand and just make sure that you only take it to this point. Now I'm going to dump the whole thing out onto the work surface. And then this is where the best part about making this pie dough comes into place. So I've created my little mound of pie dough. Now I'm going to do a French technique called frissage. What that means is smear in French. I'm going to use the palm of my hand, and I'm literally going to go what we call down the mountain. I'm going to go from the top of the little hill and go all the way down and then smear out. And I'm going to do that to this whole piece of dough. As I'm doing this, I want you to think about what you want in the perfect pie dough. You want something that's buttery. You want something that's tender. You definitely want flakes, so you want a flaky pie dough, something that shatters when you bite into it. So why am I doing this? Why am I taking this extra step? Well, in order to get all of those things in your pie dough, what I'm doing is I'm taking those chunks of butter that were in the mixture, and I'm taking my hand and I am smearing them so that they become long, flat sheets of butter within the dough. So each smear, and you can see that there's streaks of butter in here, each smear is taking this butter, which is in all various sizes and shapes, and it's forcing the butter to go long. Now, once I have all of the butter frissaged in, I'm going to take a piece of plastic wrap, and this is the next part. I'm going to closely enclose the dough and then press down. So as I'm doing this, if there was any little bit of butter that I missed in the frissage, I'm going to get it now. And I'm going to make that piece of butter nice and flat. Now, why is that so important? So this is enough pie dough for one pie. If I take the pie dough and I roll it out, and then I line a pie tin with it, and then fill it with whatever you want to fill it with, apples or blueberries or pumpkin custard, and then I put that into the oven, what I have is all of those long, flat sheets of butter. As soon as they hit the oven, butter is it's 75 to 80% fat, and the other percentage is water. So it's about 15% water. And once you take the dough and you put it into the oven, the water that's in the butter immediately turns to steam. And as it turns to steam, poof, it puffs up. Now, we had all of that flour that I showed you that was coated with little bits of butter. That is going to act as kind of the barrier within which the melted butter is going to do its action and poof up. So in order to have a flaky pie dough, you have to have both the chunks of butter, which are smeared out, and then you also have to have the dough itself, which is the butter that's been mixed in a little bit more, and then that's mixed in with the smeared out butter. So this pie dough now is going to go into the fridge for at least 30 minutes. You don't want to roll it out immediately. And part of the reason for that is that we've just added a lot of water, a lot of liquid to the flour. And the flour needs some time to absorb all of that liquid and hydrate. So we're going to let it rest in the fridge. The other reason to let it rest in the fridge is that because I've just worked the dough, all of the butter is now kind of soft and room temperature-ish, and then it's just going to melt before it turns to steam if I put it into the oven directly. So I'm going to chill it, and then when I take it out and use it again, I'm going to roll it out. And then after rolling it out, I'll line my pie tin and I'll go and I'll make pies. So there's three things that make it nice and light and flaky. The first one was the frissage. The second one was putting it in the plastic and pressing down. And then the third and final trick to make sure that you have a really flaky pie dough is that when I'm rolling out the pie dough, all of that rolling action is stretching even more layers back and forth of butter and of gluten and the flour and the butter into all the different layers. And then once that goes into the oven, then that becomes a flaky pie dough. So that's the science behind making flaky pie dough.